This is absurd, isn't it? I mean, just so that you can get what the director calls a sense of place, I have to stand here on this blasted heath, on these Northumberland fells, so you can see the beautiful view, when all I've got to do is quite simply, love, he says, cook up a little something with a Roman influence, you know, to impress the visiting professor of Roman archaeology, Hadrian's Wall, gastronomy, and Northumberland history. Very simple, isn't it? And that lot, you, are all standing there on your little tripods under umbrellas. Dismantle the whole lot. Dismantle the whole lot. Come here and pay some attention to me. Thank you very much indeed. Now then, the real purpose of this little culinary exercise is to, as I say, to interpret what the Romans might have eaten. What, 2,000, I don't know, how many thousand years ago? Several thousand years ago when they were building this wonderful wall around the place. I reckon they'd have eaten quite a lot of pig. Okay, so I've got a piece of pig here which I'm going to cut up into little cubes. Now, I want you to really believe and understand. I don't complain as a rule, but it is very cold. It is raining. I have got a temperature. Richard might have to wipe his lens off and empty his mind from time to time because the rain is coming down. So I've got pieces of pork. I've got bits of carrot. I reckon the Romans had... Oh, sorry about all this, but this is, this is real life stuff. Richard, I'm actually trying... I mean, this is my programme, please. I mean, they all know what a carrot looks like. OK, I am chopping carrots and onions. You don't need to look at them, they know what an onion is. In this appalling weather, trying to make this sort of Roman-type meal. So I've got to do all those together. I've got to chop up some garlic, because it was the Romans, after all, who brought garlic to this place. So I've got all those things together. I need some parsley, because they were great green herb users, the Romans. And also, of course, what all history and all wars have always been about have been spices and things. I mean, even in Grecian Roman times, they were squabbling over it. Well, they're going to squabble over these. Cumin seeds, ginger, marjoram, thyme, dill and stuff like that is a typical selection of Roman herbs. I mean, they had more herbs than Sainsbury's, I can tell you. Anyway, that goes into my pot. Like that, because you've got to remember, like me, these guys were stuck out here, nothing on the clock but the maker's name, and if they didn't pickle, preserve or spice their meat, it was, well, like this could be, it was pretty terrible. Anyway, they also had wine, so they whacked a load of wine into their pot with these herbs, okay, and spices. That's what they did, and being Roman soldiers, before those little signs that are now along the Hadrian's Wall and the Appian Way and all that saying, please keep Britain tidy, they probably tossed the bottles into the hedge. In we put our meat, carrots, onions and stuff like that, and we let that marinade now for about 24 hours, for about as long as it will take you to do the first 700 kilometres on the decathlon. But let me tell you about something else. In fact, I won't tell you about this. This was the Centurian's Worcester sauce. This was the Centurian's soy sauce. Walk along the wall and I'll tell you what it is and why I've got it. Emperor Hadrian was a Spanish gentleman who got the idea to build the wall from the Chinese, of course. It's a desolate spot, but you can easily imagine the legionnaires wrapped in their Armani togas under the menacing Northumbrian sky, munching on roasted dormice stuffed with minced pork and pine kernels. Yum yum, I think. But Northumbria, and here we go for complaints from the other regions, must be the most unspoilt and beautiful part of Britain. Polanski had it absolutely right when he filmed Macbeth, the Scottish play here. And this is the home of St Cuthbert, and a fine glass of mead. Here endeth the first travelogue. That took me seconds to research. Fascinating, interesting, isn't it? But back to the liquid. This is the Centurian's Daddy's ketchup, tomato sauce, call it what you will. He wouldn't have eaten anything without it because basically his food wasn't too good. But, I made this. I knew I was coming up here, and I made this about 3 weeks ago. I've had it I've had it macerating is the word ever since. It is anchovies, it's sprats, it's marjoram, it's red wine, and it's salt. It's all boiled up, left to ferment for 3 or 4 weeks, and strain, and there you have it. The Centurion sauce. In fact, we ought to brand it, shouldn't we, really? Floyd's Centurion sauce could be a big hit. Anyway, you do tend to drop a bit of that into your pork marinade, okay? And also, because they didn't have sugar in those days, and this was a bit tangy and a bit pongy, they used to put in a teaspoonful or two of honey. That's why honey people are called apiarists, I think, if I've got my words right. It's a Latin word too, isn't it? Anyway, there it all is. Richard, close up on that. I mean, you can feel it, you can smell it. There's the marinade, there's the pork, the onions, the herbs, the spices and stuff. It's been in there for about 24 hours. Now it has to go, wander round here, however you do it. It has to go into my typical, upon wood Mark IV, or at home, gas Mark VI, but wood Mark IV, it goes into there. With the lid on. Richard, I'm talking to you. For about 45 minutes. Richard, you wipe your lens, I'll blow my nose. That was a bit too hot. I know I said gas Mark IV. I can barely see through the smoke and the heat here, but I have got this guy coming today. I can't do that again, so we've got to live with it, okay? Now listen. Oh dear, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I made a little joke about the Roman soldiers throwing their bottles away, but don't be a prat. Don't listen to me. Please don't throw your bottles into the hedges, okay? Okay, Richard, back on the pot. We're not proud on this programme. If we need an expert on, say, the Romans, then the director, sparing no thought for himself, goes straight to the nearest pub and finds one. Hence Donald McFarlane. Donald, what did the Romans... I mean, you know, I feel a bit like John Cleese here. I mean, what did the Romans do for us? What did they do when they were here?
OK, I think the first thing is, can you imagine the culture shock to the locals? I mean, look around you. OK, the locals, the Briganti, the Votadini, the Selgovae, would live on the tops of these hills in small tribal...
These are people or birds?
People. In this instance, yes, that's right. Yeah. And their quite primitive lifestyle would probably the roast an ox, and everyone would partake of that. What you had when the Romans arrived is a very highly civilised nation, even by our standards. They introduced a disciplined system of society, and along with that, which is the reason why we're here, is they introduced foods, commodities, which the locals didn't have at all, like turnip, like cabbage, like lettuce, like herbs. Name a herb, the Romans will have brought
it here. You are telling me that the British cabbage was invented by some Centurians?
It was brought by the Romans, yes.
That's outrageous.
Yes.
But I'll tell you what, Donald, if I don't serve this, you know, using, of course, the standard issue imperial Roman utensils, it's going to be cooked to a frazzle. There you go. Listen, yeah, we had all the Romans, we had all them, but what other influences have sort of stormed onto Northumberland?
Yes. Well, following the Roman withdrawal from Britain, the Anglo-Saxons came into the ascendancy for, again, about another 400 years.
So, I mean, that, as a Roman historian, you are clearly second to none, but what do you think of my dish?
I think it's interesting. I think you probably recaptured the flavour of yesteryear quite well. No, it's not bad, actually. I think it's got that rough, coarse sauce, if you don't mind me saying
my dear fellow,
which I believe...
Feel free to be edited.
Yes. which I believe, sitting here for probably 3 hours trying to work my way through this, but this rough sauce would be exactly, I'm sure, as they would produce it. The liquid, I feel, is adding nothing.
I know, but I must tell you what, if I saw one of those posters in Rome that said, Caesar needs you, and this was the kind of food you got when you joined up, there's no way I'd go.
Well, I think we've got to ask the question, why did they withdraw?